Hello and welcome to the Buenos días, Oxnard podcast. Join us as we invite special guests to talk about topics that are important to everyone who lives, works, and does business in Oxnard.
Hello everyone, my name is Manuel Herrera. As many of you know, I am the creator of Citizens for a Better Oxnard. And one of the reasons I created Citizens for a Better Oxnard was to inform the people, to let people know what's going on. I often saw that there was a huge disconnect between the citizens of Oxnard and our city officials. Well, 14,000 members later, here we are, and I'm going to be interviewing the assistant city manager of Oxnard. Previously, I've interviewed Councilman Gabe Turan, and I've interviewed the city manager, Alex Nguyen. Like I said, in this case, I'll be interviewing the assistant city manager by the name of Ashley Golden. Now, many of you probably never heard her name before, but this will be a perfect opportunity for you to get to know who she is. And besides, she's a lot prettier than my previous guest. So anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to the assistant city manager, Ashley Golden. Hi, Ashley.
Hi, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, no, great to have you. Great to have you. We're going to be discussing the 2023-24 general fund budget. Okay. One of the things I've always noticed, like I mentioned earlier, is that a lot of the people of Oxnard, they're just not as informed as I think they should be. Because, we all vote, we all have to make decisions and everything. And it's easy to criticize the city on certain things, but when you don't know how things really happen, then it's uneven. It's not fair. So that's why I want to do these interviews off and on. And so one thing I was thinking about is that, and no offense or anything, but no one's ever heard of you, But it's because you're behind the scenes, right? And so people don't really see what goes behind the scenes. So I'm glad that we have you. So my first question to you is, who is Ashley Golden? By the way, I love the name.
Thank you.
I wish mine was Golden, Manuel Golden. But
it's fitting. You can try it.
Yeah,
I can borrow it for a while.
So who is Ashley Golden? How long have you been with the city? And how have you gone up the ranks and everything? Because you're now assistant city manager. So tell us a little bit about you.
All right. Well, thank you again for having me and this opportunity to get to know your followers. And I hope to see some of you at our council meetings and other community events.
Yes.
So I'm Ashley Golden. I've been with the city actually 20 years this April. So I just hit my 20-year mark.
Wow.
I started as an assistant planner in the community development department. So I was the counter planner. You came in and you wanted to get a permit in your house or build something. I was the person you talked to. I held 5 different positions over in community development. So starting in 2003, I became the director of community development in 2015. And then in 2018, I was promoted into the assistant city manager position. So I've been in the city manager's office now for a few years. I'm working under Alex, has been great and been over there. And currently I oversee the housing department and homeless services, the housing authority. I oversee community development. So they do all the building permits, code compliance, and planning and sustainability, and then also our cultural and community services division. So all things fun is what I like to refer to them.
There you go.
Youth, seniors, special populations, library, art.
Wow.
They do great service to the community. So those are the areas and the departments that I oversee, and continue to learn from each of the amazing directors and staff that we have.
Well, that's great, because now people are going to be like, oh, wow, she does all that, and they see you sometimes at the city council meetings, right?
Yes.
But it's good to know, the role of everybody.
Right.
So I went ahead and I wrote some questions that I felt the citizens of Oxnard would be interested in knowing about. So let's start right off.
Let's do it.
I'll start asking the questions. So one thing I hear a lot is people say, we pay taxes, but we don't get any services, which obviously is not true. So where do our tax dollars go? So can you explain that?
Sure. So clearly, yeah, we pay a lot of taxes. We pay them as well. But let's be clear, the income tax, which is what most people pay, none of that comes to the city. That all goes to the state or federal government. So we don't see a dime of that, but we all pay it. Doesn't always feel good, but we do. The ones that come to the city and the ones that are our biggest revenue sources are property tax and sales tax. So over the last few budgets, we've talked about this a lot, but let's take property tax for instance. Only 17.6 of that actually comes to the city. The majority of that money goes to the county and the school.
Yeah.
So on every dollar you spend, 17.6. So when you're paying that bill, keep that in mind. The lion's share is not to us.
Right.
Sales tax, it's the same thing. So our current sales tax rate is 9.25. Thank you to the voters for Measure E. That went into effect in April of 2021. But it's the same thing. Around 4% of that goes to the state. The city gets 3% of that, a little over 3% if you count Prop 172. But again, we're not getting the lion's share. And furthermore, on sales tax, just to make this point, Measure O, voter approved half set initiative, that goes away in 2029. So that 9.25 will go down to 8.75. But that also means the city is going to get less revenue. That is a net loss currently of, in today's dollars, $20 million annually. So it's a lot of money, but that does not all come directly to the city.
And you know, I'm glad actually you brought up Measure O because it will be sunsetting.
Correct.
And one of the things that the critics said about Measure E was that it never sunsets.
Mm-hmm.
But what they don't realize is that when Measure O goes away, this chunk of money is going away, and
Correct.
what are we going to do? So this will kind of offset that, right?
It'll offset some of that, correct. Yep. It's
Yeah.
very...
So, and it's and the other good point you made was about, you know, every dollar that is paid in taxes, the chunk of it goes elsewhere. We
Correct.
see pennies of it, you
We
know.
do.
So it's very important that the people know this, and that's why we're doing this, is to inform the people. So another question is, does Oxnard sales tax pay for water, wastewater, and trash services?
No. Utilities are rate funded. They are there to simply cover the direct and indirect cost of that service. There are no sales taxes even billed to them. They don't cover them. Absolutely not.
Wow. Another misconception then, because again, people think, you know, when it comes to taxes and everything, that everything goes to one bucket and everything. And, you know, when I started getting involved in the city, because, you know, I was brave going in front of the city council and everything, and I wasn't doing my homework. And so I'd ask a question, very confident in what the answer was going to be. And the answer was always something completely different. And then when I did the research, it's like, oh, God, I wish I would have known that. And again, that's another reason why I created Citizens, is so that people can get informed. Matter of fact, our motto is the best citizen is an informed citizen. So once again, I'm glad you're here so that we can, you know, let everybody know the truth. So speaking of the budget, so what's the state of Oxnard finances today compared to 5 years ago? Because we were in a mess. And the way I see it, and you can talk about this, is we're on the way up. As far as I see everything, you know, we're finally on the road to recovery. So can you talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, we've used a graphic over the last few years, and we'll most likely use it again because it's a great depiction of what we have gone through. So 4 years ago, and only 4 years ago, that's amazing to me sometimes, we were in a $9.2 million structural deficit. We've referred to that as the man in the hole. And we were down there. I mean, we were cutting services. The city council had very, very difficult decisions to make. Over 30 employees were laid off. It was probably one of the lowest points of me as an employee being here. And again, I've been here 20 years, and just having to make those type of recommendations to the council, and for the council to have to make those types of decisions for our community was horrific. But services were cut, facilities were closed down, and over 30 employees lost their jobs, and people that serve this city every day. It was horrific. But as you said, we're making improvements. We're trying to climb our way out of that hole. You know, a global pandemic didn't help us much in getting out of that hole, but we sustained. I mean, the real way that have been able to get out of the hole is Measure E. I mean, that has been, it's not a magic bullet by any means, because it's giving us enough to start to restore some of those services, not to expand services, but that is really helping us come out of the hole. We've set off on the restoration budgets, as we call them. We knew that we couldn't put everything back that we lost over the last 10 or so years. So we started on restoration budgets. The council set priorities, which gives us clear direction of where to invest. You know, they base those off community surveys and input from the community. So we've been able to align our request for funding to things that the community has said that they've wanted, and to really be able to restore back where the needs are. But along the way, there's always trouble. Always trouble. I mean, like I said, the global pandemic has made it difficult, more than just Oxnard, but I mean, there's been supply chain disruptions, labor shortage, and then, you know, our consultant capacity. We rely a lot on consultants, but they've had capacity issues as well. And then this year, we now have a new lawsuit from Aaron Starr about our ability to bond for improvements.
You know, that name sounds awfully familiar, Aaron Starr, but we'll get to him in a minute. But so, speaking of Measure E, so how much does Measure E bring in every year, and what impact will that have on the budget?
So the first year when it came in, it was around 57 million. This upcoming year, we're projecting around 60 million. And I know that sounds like an obscene amount of money. It does. I mean,
Right.
I can't even fathom what that would mean from a personal life. But when you're talking about a city of our size and of our age, the money goes really quickly, and still doesn't provide adequate and restored services to the community. But it's a lot of money. We've primarily been able to invest that in roads, road maintenance, park maintenance. I mean, I know you've seen some of our parks in the past. They got to a pretty poor state over the last few years. So we've been able to reinvest in parks, tree maintenance, parkways, landscaping, start to restore our public service, our public safety, our police and fire, and restore youth and senior programming. The first year of Measure E alone, they were able to get $3 million and start to restore a lot of the hours that were cut from those programs before.
Well, yeah, well, you know, a lot of our citizens fought for Measure E because we knew the importance of it. You know, you're always going to have your critics, and they're always going to talk about why we shouldn't do this and that, but I thank God every day for Measure E, so.
We do as well. I mean, our community deserves more than we can even give them at this point, but that is the way to get back to being able to restore the services.
Yeah. And especially, again, that Measure O is going away.
Correct.
So now, how is the upcoming budget different from 2019 and our deficit years?
Right. I mean, clearly without Measure E, we would have kept going further and further into a structural deficit and had more cuts and more services. So from that to now, I mean, our budget is positive. It's not as much as we hoped it would be, primarily because of the bond litigation, but this budget is different from those previous years because we are still able to do restorations. Unfortunately, this year we're only recommending about $3 million in restorations because we're having to cash fund streets and our citywide computer system. We refer to that as the ERP system. Not a very sexy name to call it, but that is a brainchild that we need to be able to serve our residents. But because of that bond litigation, we can't fund those through that, and instead we're having to cash fund them, which reduces our ability to restore more of the youth and senior programs, increase staffing within other departments, community development, where I'm sure you hear on your website or on your page as well, all the complaints about building permits. Well, this kind of hamstrings us where we can't make improvements in all of those areas.
So I'm glad you brought that up because I did want to ask you about the bond litigation. Mm-hmm. So basically it's Aaron Starr once again suing the city, and because of that lawsuit, and again, in simple terms, if you can explain exactly how this works. Now, normally the city doesn't want to pay cash for everything, right? Because then you deplete your general fund, your cash, and so forth. So a lot of the times, what cities do is they'll create bonds, right, to help pay for this.
Right.
And so because of this lawsuit now, the city cannot seek bonds for projects that in this case, there's some projects that were already on the books, ready to go and everything, and that's going to be a halt to that. So can you let the people know exactly what's going on?
Okay. Well, so the council and our financing authority approved $45 million worth of bonds, some of it for our ERP system, the computer-wide system, and some of it for the streets and alley reconstruction, which we were also forced to do because of a measure in initiative before where we had to get our roadways to a certain
Right.
grading, and similar to school, 0 being the lowest and 100 being an A, our roads were anywhere. We were not an A, let's just say.
Right.
I believe we were at 63. They call that pavement condition index. We were at a 63, and we need to get to a 70 because of that. So we've been investing a lot in streets and roadways, sometimes at the expense of other improvements that the community wants, and we understand that, but we're kind of fighting on all battles. So we went to issue bonds so that we could improve the streets. I mean, they are a major asset within the city. We can't have them deteriorate,
Right.
They also protect other assets underneath the roadway that we need if we would like water and sewer and all those other really important things. So at this point, we need to keep fixing the roadways and maintaining them, not only because our community deserves better roadways, but because they're a big asset. So we have recommended that the council, even though we can't get the bonds, which would be the way that you would fund them, because a road doesn't serve just you and me today. That road's going to serve us for years to come. So often
Right.
those are what you are going to bond for, because they're serving multiple generations, so
Right.
they pay for it over time. Instead, you would use your general fund for your normal services, your police, your fire, your recreation, those things, because they're serving that person today. So in this case, we can't get the bonds. We won't be able to get any bonds until this is resolved. So we're recommending cash funding to the tune of $18 million in this upcoming year for both streets and the ERP system. That's $18 million that's not going to recreation. That's not going to police and fire, to our IT department, to any of those other needs. I mean, you name it, they're not able to get that money.
Now, that seems to me, and this is my word, that it's kind of like Star's sabotaging the city. I mean, first he puts out a measure where, like you were talking about the road index, and you were trying to meet that, and then with this, now that's going to jeopardize that. So to me, it's just me talking, but it's like he's sabotaging the whole success of what the city's been doing, because again, in my opinion, I mean, we're finally on the road to recovery. We're looking good, and then this happens. So, I don't like it one bit.
And I don't want to harp on it, but those are just the active projects that we had. I mean, that was things that we were already underway on that would come to a halt if council didn't make this difficult decision to put the cash towards it. But we had a multitude of other projects that were in the pipeline. I mean, we had senior centers that were supposed to be renovated. We had a new senior center that was supposed to be under construction. Fire stations, quite a few renovations to the fire station. I mean, we're an old city where these resources have been around for a long time. They're essential to the services that we provide to our community. I mean, with the Aquatic Center, seawalls, a number of items that we anticipated issuing the bonds for, because again, they're multi-generational projects. It allows more cash in the current year that you have to be able to provide those other services and pay for that over time. But all of that has to be on pause until the bond litigation is complete.
So all of this has to be put on pause, or if there's important projects, then the city has to pay cash for that.
Correct.
Right? So one scenario I often give is it would be like me having money in the bank, but I want to buy a house, but I don't want to pay cash for the house because then I don't have any money left. So instead I get a mortgage for it that's paid over 30 years or whatever. So that's kind of the scenario with this, right? Where, because a lot of cities, they issue bonds and everything. So why is Star picking on Oxnard? Like, isn't this what other cities do?
It is. It's very common. I mean, and building on the individual home example, imagine your family was over 200,000 people. I mean, we're talking about a home on a massive scale. We're talking about a home that has 200,000 plus toilets. I mean, it's hard to even equate it to just a home when you talk about the size of Oxnard and the community that we're serving and all the services that we provide. And we are a full service city, police, fire, all utilities, all of that. So I get it that it's easier to understand that on a personal budget, but we have to provide on so many different facets for our community, and they deserve that. That's what they expect of us, and that's what they should expect of us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What are some of the things the residents will see or experience in Oxnard?
So for this upcoming budget, despite so the $3 million, I don't think I actually was clear about that. I'm sorry. The $3 million that we're recommending in the upcoming budget, about $1 million of it's going to go towards the police department for 11 new positions, 6 of those being sworn officers. So this will still keep them at staffing levels, though, below 2015. I want to make it clear that all of this is still restoration. We are not building an empire here.
Right.
They will be at their staffing levels less than 2015 still with $1 million influx and 11 new positions. So the other one, IT, our information technology, we're going to continue to invest in cybersecurity. I mean, everybody you see gets hit by this at personal level, government, businesses. It's big, and we need to protect our infrastructure as well so we can provide services to the residents. The other $1 million that we're recommending is actually kind of little pots of money here and there for the 8 other departments. Not even all the departments are actually getting any type of restoration this year. But despite only $3 million being invested back in on these type of investments, you're going to continue to see us push to hire people because people are who deliver services.
Right.
And we have a really high vacancy rate like a lot of other cities, but within the police department, we've been able to get that down to around 4.5%. It was at a high of over 10% in 2021. So we are doing a good job in recruiting people here to protect our community, which is great. You're going to continue to see investments in our parkways and our parks and our streets and our street trees. So they will continue to make improvements out there. They're heavily utilized services or resources by our community. And I think those are the major ones that you'll be able to visually see. Recreation, unfortunately, with the bond litigation, we're not able to recommend further increases there. So they do great work with the resources that they have. That you'll continue to see them open and providing those services, but you won't see any restoration past what they've already been able to do.
Wow. Okay. So what are some of the things that community members won't see but are vital for City Hall to function?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we're investing in IT. Again, that's something that people don't see. And most likely it doesn't affect their day-to-day life, but when it goes wrong, it goes wrong. So they won't see the modernizing and the cybersecurity investments that we make, but they're really, really important. I think also continuing to improve our credit rating. So we've been working hard on that, maintaining stability, increasing the revenue, spending money the way that we say we're spending money, cleaning up audit findings. All those things are really important because hopefully when the bond litigation is done, we can issue bonds, and we're able to do that. You're issuing at a better credit rating, and so that means it's cheaper long term. So it's saving the residents money over time, and it allows us to do more for our community. So I think that's really important. And I'd say the other one is retaining and training staff. People provide services, not equipment, not people. You need the people behind it, and so especially in this labor market where it's hard to even get them in the door, you really do, once you've already made that investment and took the time to recruit, you want to train them and keep them. So we'll be able to do that and keep them on board. And you want people that know the community too. You want people that have been here learning and servicing the community.
Okay. Was there more the department directors hoped for?
Of course. We received about $18 million in requests from the department directors this year. And like I said, we're recommending $3 million. There are, and to be fair, there's other one-time, we call them projects, because we have a fund balance in Measure O and the general fund. We're able to do some of the one-time. Majority of that's going to streets and alleys and the ERP because we need to do those things. But yeah, $18 million of requests. We had set up what we refer to as restoration budgets when Measure E was established. And so we asked directors to come up with a plan, a 3-year plan at that time, of build back what you lost during the different cuts over all the years. What services did you provide to the community? Let's incrementally put them in, because we knew we couldn't grow too fast in one time. We didn't know there was going to be a global pandemic and labor shortage and all of that. But with that, it's shortened it. So they've had a plan. They've been really measured about what they've asked for, and again, those council priorities have really helped hone in on where to put them. So, like recreation asked for money to be able to put back in more of the swimming pool hours that they had before the Colonial pool, to bring back some of their senior and youth programs. And the labor shortage impacts that as well, but the funding impacts that. We don't have the ability to restore at the rate that we had hoped for and that the community deserves.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and see, again, I know I've already mentioned this, but see, people don't realize like everything that happens behind the scenes, how everything's important, how one thing impacts another thing, and it's like, that's why I'm so glad we're doing this. So, thank you. Now, next question. When might we be able to have basic programs and services properly restored?
Wow.
Do you have a crystal ball? Can you?
I mean, if I did, our community would probably be in a whole different state. I mean, none of us predicted the global pandemic. I mean, so
Right.
no. Like I said, our plan was 3 years. The council set 5-year priorities. The city manager did a presentation to council back on February 7th where we talked about this need to shift gears and extend out our priorities and our restoration budgets. You can't get the staffing in there for some of that, but a lot of it is just we just can't build that fast. So I don't have a crystal ball. Really, really hard to predict. I can say the bond litigation slows a lot of it down. The staffing slows a lot of it down as well. You need people. And during Alex's presentation on the 7th, we were at a 14% vacancy rate. And that's across the board at counties, other cities as well. That's not an Oxnard problem. But it's a problem everywhere, and it's going to make it hard. So my best guess, we really would like to do it within 5, but it's really hard to tell. I can just tell you that we're going to continue to make progress. We're going to continue to push for what our community needs and deserves. And if you watch that February 7th presentation, the city manager called that this year in Oxnard is the year of the tortoise. And you know who wins that race between the tortoise and the hare. So we're just going to keep on going, albeit slow, but we're going to go. We're going to keep pushing.
So the sky isn't falling. We're going to be okay. Look, we got hit with a pandemic. Nobody predicted. There's a lot of things that happened. We're still here.
We're still here.
The city is still the city I love.
Me too.
And so, besides all this stuff happening to us, I'm so glad that we have the right people in place to keep this city functioning. So when you get back, thank all your staff and everything, okay?
They are great. They are great.
Now, I wanted to ask you about the Aquatic Center. So, that's a huge, huge project. And I myself, I can't wait, Matter of fact, recently I took a trip and we were on vacation, and there was 7 swimming pools. This one facility had 7 swimming pools and slides and the whole bit. I mean, I'm an old man, but I still love that stuff, and I had such a great time. And it reminded me, because I thought, we're going to get an aquatic center. So, now one of the things the critics say is, oh my God, the price of it has ballooned, and how are we going to pay for it, and how could you do this and this and that? So can you touch on the Aquatic Center, what it is, how we're going to pay for it, why it's not a bad thing?
Well, it's definitely not a bad thing. The council made a decision. They wanted to prioritize a large investment in South Oxnard, and we heard from the people. This is what they want.
Yes.
They were highly involved in the process through community surveys, through our school programs. We talked to the kids, we talked to the parents, we had community events of, what do you want? I mean, and we have the Colonia pool to serve our entire community of over $200,000. I mean, $200,000, I'm sorry, 200,000 people. Mm-hmm. We're a coastal community, and we don't have access. We don't provide access to our residents to learn how to swim, to have life safety, to have this love of water. So we listen to the community. The council listened to the community. They prioritize that. The council prioritized that large investment in South Oxnard. It's a great location for it within College Park, with other things to do as well. But quite frankly, with the bond litigation, it's dead in the water. No pun intended, or maybe a little pun intended. But that is not something we could recommend cash funding at the expense of all the other needs that this community has. You cannot put forward a $60 million aquatic center that would provide so much opportunity, and not just for the youth. I mean, that is a family place. There is something for all people within that facility.
Well, actually, I was going to ask you, because the critics say, hey, 60 million for a swimming pool. Oh my God. Well, it's not just a
It's
swimming
not a
pool,
swimming
right?
pool,
So
no.
can you touch on that? I know it's been presented to the city council,
Right.
but a lot of people don't watch all the time. So what exactly is the Aquatic Center? What will it consist of, and how does it benefit Oxnard?
Yeah, so it's definitely a lot more than a pool. So the original plan was for a 50-meter pool, which is an Olympic-sized pool, very large, multiple lanes, really deep, and then what they call a training pool, a 25-yard pool, and that's where you really, for somebody that's not comfortable in the water, it's where you can still touch the ground. It's maybe 4 feet deep, so it gives you that ability to feel like, I got this.
So I would be able to stand up.
Probably.
Okay.
It's also the place where you would do a lot of your rec programs and your senior programs. Water aerobics has gotten really big. There's a lot of other things that you can do in that size of pool. And then there was the more the fun side of the pool, if you will. Then that's where there was a lazy river, water slides, and 2 water slides. The community was really clear that was important to them, of having a slide. Some people don't like to be enclosed. Some people don't want such a big one. Again, to be able to provide for all aspects of our community, all ages, all abilities. That was the area where you take your family and they can get used to it, or our special populations is really important to us. So anybody that would have a disability or not an ability to get fully in the water, it's a place that they could still enjoy and be part of something. So that was referred to commonly within that industry as the fun water zone versus the competition and the actual swimming side of it. And the idea is you kind of graduate up. If you're not used to water, you don't just go jump in a 50-meter pool.
Right.
And the other really fun part and interesting part, which would be great for our community in the fun water side, is within the lazy river, you can create currents. So you can replicate what happens in the ocean to be able to teach our community that's next to the ocean. If you're how do you get out of a rip tide or rip current, and it's life skills, it's safety skills. So it was all of those things, plus clearly administrative offices to support it, lifeguard facilities, all of that.
Wow.
But at this point, you can't cash fund that. So, the cost did go up more than we expected. There's inflation, all this influx of money into the economy through the pandemic. Costs went up. And we came back to the council. We want to be responsible with the money that they've allocated to this. We came back and we recommended reducing the size of one of the pools so that we could still provide the asset to the community.
Right.
We want to be responsible. We want to give them this. They deserve it.
It's funny you just said that, because I was waiting for you to finish, because I was going to say, and Oxnard deserves this.
They do.
And we do. And the South Side deserves this. It's for everybody.
It's
but,
for everybody.
They're often saying, well, you never put anything on the South Side. So you finally do. And they're like, well, why are you putting this on the South Side? So, you can never win, right? But it's to those 5 critics, because the majority of the people, they know what's going on. And they support all this, just like they supported Measure E. And, So despite all the bad news, and all these lawsuits, I can tell the people, and I'm sure you can too, that we're still on the road up.
Yep.
Where there's great things coming to the city of Oxnard, and the more we inform the people of this, the better for everybody. Because I often tell city council members and everybody that, if the people don't know what you're doing, they think you're doing nothing. So that's why I want to have these shows. I want to interview people. I want people to get the facts. We're not trying to butter them up. We're not trying to throw lies at them. We're just trying to correct the truth, because there's a lot of people that are misinformed or just don't know what they're talking about. Because a lot of these critics are people who absolutely know nothing about running a city. You've been doing this for 20 years. You know what it's like. These critics are people who just go online and Google something, and now they're experts on how to run a city. So people don't believe none of that stuff. So, anyways, I want to thank you so much for your time. I know you're a very busy person, so thank you for taking the time. And is there any last comments you want to make about the budget or about anything else that you'd like to say to the people?
Well, first, thank you for having me. This is a new experience for me as well.
Yeah.
I do a lot of presentations for City Council, but not a lot of this type of interaction or town hall meetings, so I appreciate the opportunity. To all of your fans and followers, thank you for taking the time to get to know me this way. I hope to see you, like I said, at a meeting. But as it relates to the budget, I know we covered a lot, but I do want to be clear that it's positive. We're not the man in the hole. We're not at a $9.2 million structural deficit. We're making restorations. small ones in my mind for what the community deserves, but it's a positive budget. And it's our third year of a positive budget, meaning we're not at a structural deficit. We're not laying people off. We're not cutting services. We're not restoring at the rate that we want to. So this was just a kind of preview to the budget. We'll be releasing more materials. Please read them. Please stay informed. There'll be a lot more information out. We'll have budget hearings in June. So I hope more people will participate and, like you say, be informed and be engaged.
Yes, absolutely. That's all we ask for, right?
Yes.
All right. So Ashley, thank you very much. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
your time.
I appreciate yours as well. Thank you.
Okay, bye.